Thank you very much. I feel like God's already been speaking this morning, which is really exciting. The prophetic that's come out, the song, the beautiful prophetic song we had this morning, Millie's choices of songs. Jesus is already in the room. Jesus is already speaking. In fact, when I got here, Az started the prayer meeting with the words, "Come, all who are thirsty, come buy and eat." And that is where I'm heading this morning. There's an invitation this morning. We're looking at Esther 4, the scepter, and I've called the talk, "The Scepter, an Invitation." An invitation. Jesus invites us this morning to have a banquet with him, a feast with him. We're going on a journey. We're going to start and end with a feast, a banquet. Sorry, there's not any physical food. Sorry about that. It's a metaphor. We're going to go via, on our journey, the throes of despair. We're going to look at and experience life or death risk. We're going to see hope, which has come out in the prophetic this morning, hope in the jaws of despair. We're going to experience abundant grace. And we're going to have an opportunity to join in the banquet. Now, I don't know where you were a few weeks ago, but a few weeks ago it was Christmas. And we decorated our house. I'm sure you did too. We had a tree. We put baubles up. The kids went mad on kind of Christmas craft. Actually, this year, now they're getting older, are they all gone rich? Good. The standard is getting higher and higher. Praise God. So it wasn't just the kind of like paper craft. We now had a kind of silk thing that they made out of rope, aided by my mum. And we got the house ready for Christmas. I'm sure you did too. There was lots of preparation. There was present buying. There was lots of thought about what we were going to eat. There was lots of peeling and cutting and roasting. And I spent quite a few days soaking raisins and dates and things in brandy, ready for the Christmas pudding. And eventually we got to, as I'm sure you did, this moment. Hurrah! Christmas Day! We had an Australian Christmas dinner this year. My brother-in-law, who sat next to me, he is Australian and he said he was missing home, so he wanted an Australian Christmas dinner. So we had chicken burgers, roasted roast potatoes. My sister-in-law, who's in the Orange Crown, she said, I'm sorry, but I need to have my pigs in blankets. It's got to happen. And we had loads of salad. It was the healthiest Christmas dinner I think I've ever eaten. And we finally, as you can see, the table is laden with food. It was practically groaning with food. There was wine. There were 3 or 4 puddings. There was laughter. We spent ages around that table, laughing, joking, talking, enjoying each other's company. In fact, a whole afternoon can pass on Christmas Day, just sat round the table, enjoying each other's presence. It's not like in the week, is it, where you hoof down your dinner as quick as possible and then we leap in a car and go to whichever club the kids are going to. You spend time, you linger. And I want you to hold that thought of the feast for the end. The thing is, chapter 4 of Esther starts not with a feast, but with despair. So we're in Esther 4, and we're going to read verse 1 to 3. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes. He put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. It struck me, that word lay. Like, that's not any old sadness, is it? That is extreme depression, to lay in sackcloth, to lay in ashes. Mordecai is practically catatonic with sadness and depression. Now, the fact that he's at the gate suggests he actually had some authority. If you were a ancient Middle Eastern authority, you would understand that. You would understand that being at the gate means that you're a person of dignity. You're an authority. You might be an administrator or an accountant. He has some importance. He's kind of middle class, as it were. But he's not allowed through the gate in his rags. He has to wear official clothes. And Esther offers him some clothes, but he refuses them. I wonder if he feels that his position, now the Jews are going to be wiped out, is meaningless. Perhaps he doesn't want to work for the king who says that all Jews must die. That would be understandable, wouldn't it? He's powerless. He's prostrate in desperation, and so are many of the Jews. He is as close, because he's at the gate, he's as close as he can possibly get to the king, but he's not allowed through it. He's not allowed in his old position near the king. But despite his despair, he has faith in an extraordinary God. And I think we see a model here of how we handle times when we are depressed, when we're desperate, when we're in despair. He trusts that an extraordinary God can help him. And he says to Esther, if you remain silent, if you choose not to use your position as queen to approach the king, if you choose that, that's okay. Because if you choose that and you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. That is trust. His niece is queen. His niece has position, but he says to her, whatever you do, whatever you choose, there will be deliverance from another place. And do you know what's amazing? There is something of eternal significance here, because you and I are sat here today looking at this moment, listening to this moment. This was not just a moment of suffering, that it has eternal significance. We're still talking about it today. Jews still celebrate the Feast of Purim. And Esther too trusts in God's power, and not only in her own strength. She's actually in a really weak position. I didn't quite realize this, but when I read it, it really struck me. She's not been called to the king for 30 days. So she's going to go to the king and ask the king for a request, but he hasn't called her for a month. She's in a real position of weakness. Her power, in terms of her human power, her female beauty, that power is fading. So she's got nothing left but to trust in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And I've been really challenged by this. Not by might, not by power, but by the Lord. Not by my strength, but by him. I'm a jar of clay, but his strength is the treasure within. Ori, our eldest daughter, she's 13, she's in year 9 at the King's School. We've been watching all things Titanic recently. So you're about to get a reflection of that, because I've had icebergs on the brain. So here's an iceberg, and if I've taught you at any point, you might recognize this analogy. So the idea of the iceberg is that on the surface is what we see, but underneath is this kind of huge structure, much bigger than what we see on the surface. And of course, that was the felling of the Titanic, wasn't it? That they thought they'd got away with it, but underneath was much bigger, and it cut through the Titanic like peeling a tin. Esther has what I'm calling iceberg devotion. iceberg devotion. And I wondered, do you have iceberg devotion? I've been asking myself, do I have iceberg devotion? Now, what do I mean? On the surface, on the top, we have her request from the king, for the king. We have a request. And her request that we're looking at today, at the moment, is to come to a banquet. That's what we see. But because she also tells everyone to fast and pray, that request is built on a foundation of hours in fasting and prayer. There she is going, when she goes to the king and she asks, she's not going in her own strength. She's going supported on a structure of private prayer. And I wonder, do we have iceberg devotion? Do we have the strength underpinning us, supporting us in our surface work, in our daily grind? Because if you look on the surface for Esther, it looks pretty bleak, doesn't it? Pretty bleak. There's a huge problem. She only has access if she is invited. And she only has access if she's invited, if she keeps her identity as a Jew secret. So altogether, on this surface, she is very, very vulnerable. And we're told there's the matter of the Persian law. In fact, in chapter 4, it's called the one law. The one law. And this one law, I think, shows how vain this king is that anyone who enters the king's presence without permission will die. You have to be pretty vain to invent that and call it the one law. He has ultimate power, ultimate authority, and he commands life and death at a whim. And that can change just like that. You know, John did a fantastic job. I loved his analogy from Lord of the Rings of worm tongue, like in his ear all the time. That's the whim. That's the whim of a powerful man. He's pretty foolish, I would say. He's petty. He's changeable. He's easily persuaded. And his vanity is, I think, what makes Esther's risk so great. She's completely subordinate. But she takes a chance, a gamble. She rolls the dice. Will he accept or not? It's such a great book, this book. It's like the ultimate story of stories, isn't it? It's like pantomime. You feel like, will she do it? Oh, yes, she will. Oh, no, she won't. It is proper good stuff, this story. So she rolls the dice. She hasn't been invited. She could die, but she may die in a few months anyway, because she's Jewish. So she takes the risk. And amazingly, we know this story, don't we? He extends the scepter of welcome. But she has to receive the gift. She has to receive the invite. She has to touch the scepter back. So we get this wonderful picture of an exchange. In verse 11, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law. There you go, but one law. That they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I, Esther, was called to go to the king. And she does it. Here's the scepter. So this on the throne is not actually Xerxes. This is Darius II. But behind him is Xerxes, Darius's son. So you can see Xerxes here holding a cup. And then Darius is on the throne with the scepter. Now, when Darius dies, that scepter gets passed to Xerxes as a sign that he is now the ruler. He's the one with authority. He is the shepherd of the people. And they think in 1959, they found what they think is the scepter and it's there. I mean, it's quite stunning, actually. It's gold with lapis lazuli. It's very stunning. They're not 100% sure, but they think it looked like that. This scepter is a visible representation of his total authority. Xerxes may have earthly power, but God, Esther knows, has heavenly power. And his scepter, we're shown in Isaiah 14 verse 5, will actually break the rod of the wicked and break the scepter of the rulers. And Babylon is mentioned. Now, Persia, which is where we are, took over, invaded and took over the Babylonian Empire. So this scepter, we're told, will be broken. And it'll lay in the ground somewhere until archaeologists dig it up. That's what happens with earthly power. It's for a time. But we're told in Psalm 45 verse 6, God's scepter of justice, not of whim, vanity, not manipulative, God's scepter of justice will be the scepter of the kingdom, and it will last forever and ever. And Esther knows this. This is her iceberg under the surface. She knows this when she goes before the changeable, petty, vain King Xerxes. She knows she's undergirded by the scepter of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And she can admit, if I perish, I perish, because she's utterly reliant on God. But we also see that at this moment in time, she's utterly reliant on Xerxes' favour. And we're going to look this morning at this word favour. In Esther, I've snuck one in from Esther 5, so I'm sorry whoever's preaching next week. I hope I don't tread on your toes. But in Esther 5, she says, if the king regards me with favour, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request. And then she invites him to the banquet. This word here, favour, is the Hebrew word chein or charis in Greek, which you might be more familiar with. And it has, if you look at our English underneath, we actually use loads of words. And in Hebrew and in Greek, they use just one. So we might talk about favour, we might talk about a gift, we might talk about being beautiful or hearing something that's beautiful. We might talk about being compassionate or having grace. And all those words are that word chein or charis. So Esther has chein. She has it because she is a beautiful woman. And she is, when she goes to the king, he potentially responds to her beauty and receives her as a gift because she's beautiful. But Esther also doesn't have chein because she's Jewish. And she might not receive his favour, but his disgrace. Because according to Persian law, her Jewishness means that she deserves death. So she is in desperate need of his chein, his charis, his grace. And he reaches out his scepter. It must have been a moment awash with relief. She must have just taken a deep sigh. And when she touches the scepter, his authority is actually transferred to her. And he responds in extravagance because he's that kind of changeable kind of guy. He goes, yeah, have half my kingdom, like you do. But half his kingdom, right? His kingdom goes from Ethiopia all the way to India. So when he says half my kingdom, it's not like the UK, have Wales. It's like swathes of land. He is extravagantly generous. And it's an act of undeserved chen or charis, undeserved grace and favour. But we see a fuller meaning of this word in Exodus, when God says who he is. He says, I am the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God. I am slow to anger. I am abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion and sin. I am Yahweh in Hebrew. And when a Hebrew hears Yahweh, they think not just I am, they think I am gracious and compassionate. I am slow to anger. I am. It's God's name. It's God's name. And in Hebrew, your name is not just a label like it is in the UK. Your name, God's name, is who he is. It's who he is to his core. You know, it's who he is deep inside of his marrow to his bones. He's compassionate and gracious and slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness. And he forgives thousands, even though they don't deserve it. Thousandth generation, it says. It's not just 1,000, it's 1,000 generations. It's all people. It's not literal. It's all people, all time. There's an extravagant grace. And we come this morning, we're invited this morning to an extravagant God. It's who he is. It's his name. It's his name. And sometimes a revelation of God's grace can be found in the most unexpected of places and the most unexpected time. We're talking about tragedy this morning. We're talking about genocide. And yet God's grace is found through a king who doesn't deserve to be the person who shows that grace. But we find grace in an unexpected place. I want to introduce you to someone who's very special to me this morning. And there should be some R's in the room because this is my niece, Caris. So this is my niece, Caris. She's 18 months old. And she is, sometimes you get babies who just respond to everybody with a smile. She's one of those. My kids weren't like that. They respond to everyone apart from me and Rich with screaming. I wanted to have those kind of kids that just, are sunny children, but they just screamed when anyone else came near them. But Caris is not like that. Caris is always smiling, always happy, and always trying to chat. She can't say any words. She's got the tune, but not the lyrics. She just jabbers. She's very, very cute. We're going to see her next week. She has a great name, I think you'll agree. It's a name rich in meaning, but Caris is also a girl full of significance. She's a much longed for baby. She's born 4 years after the stillbirth of my brother and sister-in-law's stillborn daughter, Estelle. Estelle was born sleeping at 38 weeks. It's completely random, actually. There was a bubble of oxygen, got into the umbilical cord, and at 38 weeks, Estelle died. Estelle's name is the same Persian word as Esther. It means star. And baby Caris is a gift from God following a senseless tragedy. Estelle was born in a really bleak season. In the January lockdown, do you remember the January lockdown? Trying to force the kids out on walks, weren't we, Rich? But it was cold. It was freezing, actually. We'd done it 3 times before. And we had this kind of horrible tragedy happen in the middle of it. And it was difficult to see the hand of God in the death of a baby who never even got a chance of life. And at the time, someone bought this very special book for us. the moon is always round. It's based on Psalm 105. For the Lord is good, Psalm 100 verse 5. For the Lord is good, his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. So the concept of the book, this is the central page spread. This is that, and it's quite simple, but it's clever and beautiful. So some days we see the whole of the moon. Some days we only see a sliver of the moon. But the moon is always round. The moon, in its roundness, is always there. We just can't see it. And likewise, the book declares, some days we see the whole of God's love, and some days we see just a sliver. Some days we can't even see God's love at all, but God's love is still there. The moon is always round. My brother and sister-in-law gave Estelle her name because of a verse in Daniel 12 that says, many who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life. Then the wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. We heard that this morning through the songs. We have hope. We have hope of everlasting life. We believe in a God. It's not just about the now. We believe in a God who gives us hope. A couple of days after Estelle died, my brother was listening to a podcast on the Lord of the Rings. And the podcaster was explaining that in Elvish, there are 2 words for hope. So one might very British, but one might be saying, we're hoping there's no rain tomorrow. That's one kind of hope. But in Elvish, I know it's a made-up language, but it's very clever. There's a second one. And the second meaning of hope is that even if we lose the battle, there is still hope. And to my brother's amazement, he then went on to say the word in Elvish for hope is Estelle. And my brother's prayer for Estelle's life is that she will, through telling her story, she will go on to lead many into righteousness. And that's why she was given that name. That her gift, her charis, would be that many would come into the kingdom as a result of hearing her story. And 6 years on, there's redemption. God has redeemed what the enemy meant for evil. He's turned for good through the gift of his grace, baby charis. So in a gift of grace, Xerxes extends his scepter. And likewise, Jesus on the cross stretches his arms out for us to show God's abundant and extravagant love to a wayward, sinful, and undeserving humanity. God's cry of love is expressed on that cross through the Word made flesh, who comes in grace and truth. That's charis again. That's Chain again. Jesus comes in grace and truth. And Esther's response to the king is to say, come to a banquet, come and get to know me better. And Jesus invites us to come and dwell with him, to dine with him at his banqueting table. And he offers the Holy Spirit to indwell in us, to dine with us, as it were, making us every day as we dine with him in our iceberg devotional time, to dine with him. He is making us more and more like the king, transferring that authority through the scepter to us. We started this morning with a man in despair. But the incredible hope of the big Bible story is exactly for those who are in the throes of despair. Xerxes' earthly throne room is a place of oppression. There's a fickle ruler who metes out life and death in a whim. And earthly power is often a bit like that, isn't it? Earthly power under governments who abuse their power. Many people around the world are oppressed. Esther is a beautiful foreshadow that there is a better heavenly throne room and there is a place of hope that, to quote from Elvish and Lord of the Rings, even if we lose the battle, there is still hope. In the heavenly throne room, we're told at the end in Revelation, God will wipe every tear from their eyes. There'll be no more death and no more mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things will pass away. And then John says, behold, I am making all things new. That's the invitation of the King this morning. Even when a situation looks bleak, the moon is always round. Even when you can't see it, the moon is always round. God's invitation this morning is to us. It's to you. It's to me. He's inviting us this morning to a banquet. It's a bit blurry, but there's my Christmas dinner again. There's a feast for us this morning. While I've been writing this sermon, I've had that verse from Song of Solomon going round my head. And it was a song in the 90s as well. And it's just gone round and round my head. And the words are, let him lead me to the banquet hall and let his banner over me be love. And I've had that sort of going round and round my head. His banner over me is love. Not only is his banner love, but you're invited to taste of a feast. It's not just like, a little cheese sandwich. Cheese sandwich of his love. There's a feast for you. Different courses, a tasting menu, as it were. It's luxurious. His grace is extravagant. So let him lead you this morning to the banqueting table. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste his grace. Drink deeply of his compassion, his charis. And may it be a gift to you this morning. There is heavenly hope. Just as Esther's request resulted in freedom for the Jewish people, eventually, as you'll see as the weeks go on, this is magnified in eternity, where Jesus redeems his people and brings freedom for all people who are in Christ. So we're invited. This morning, the scepter is extended to you. God's eternal scepter, a scepter of justice, is extended to you this morning. So come, feast at his table, where the moon is always round, and his banner over you is always love.